walk down memory lane. Rabbi Epstein was the very first principal of the Hasten Hebrew Academy. He lives in Israel now, and he came in specially for the 40th anniversary dinner. In the meantime, since after he left the Hebrew Academy, he did spend some time as a principal in Hong Kong, which I think is extremely interesting, and now he lives over the Green Line in one of the settlements in Alon Shvut. So he's going to talk to you a little bit about his experience, past, present, and he said, and your future. Let's please give him our attention. Thank you for sharing with us this morning.
Well, it's a real treat to be here. When I was last here in this area, there was no second floor. And the library down the street over here had about 50% of the volumes that they have today. And I think we had 2 token computers in the building. And a lot of things have happened since then. Let me just tell you exactly who I am. First of all, I'm a parent. I had 3 of my children go through this school and actually go all the way to the bitter end. And I know exactly what this school is, because the good news is you could go on Google or you could go on the homepage of Hasten Hebrew Academy, and the good news for me is that the values and the goals and the mission haven't changed one bit in some 40 years. Many of you know that last night there was a presentation of the founders of the school, which is why it's called the Hasten Hebrew Academy, honoring them because they had the idea to come to a city like Indianapolis. At that time, it was the only city in North America with a Jewish population of 10,000 that didn't have a Jewish day school for kids to go all day long. And it was a real challenge, and you guys are so lucky because you would not believe what your predecessors in the 6th and 7th grade had to go through to do a daily program here. It wasn't in this building, it was sort of like next door, and eventually after 4 or 5 years, it came to be here. So that's who I am. The first principal, I came, not a single student had signed an application form, not a single parent had paid any tuition, and not a single teacher was hired, and not a single textbook was bought. And that's how I came in August. In 1 month, I think our first class was about 17, and that 17 included kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and eventually 3rd grade. So you can figure it out mathematically. What is the average class size of K, 1, 2, 3, based on 17 children? High math. Okay.
Around 4 kids per class.
Right, about 4 or 5 kids a class, depending on what the mix was, and that was the beginning of the Hebrew Academy of Indianapolis. So that's where I started. It was my first principalship officially of a Jewish day school. I've been a principal of afternoon schools, of high schools, all kinds of things. But this was a real challenge for me because I had to probably beg and borrow and plead with parents, please send your kid. Parents who did not know how to read Hebrew, parents who didn't really know what Judaism was all about, parents who did not have what you guys have, which is essentially a background in Jewish education, parents who couldn't read in the prayer book, and some of them couldn't read the English or the Hebrew. And it was a real challenge, but Hashem upstairs was watching out, and that's how the school got off the ground. It's called HHAI Pratit. Anybody want to tell me what that would mean? HHAI Pratit, yes?
Private,
Right, exactly. Hashem guards, he has HHAI, and it's Pratit, it's on every single individual. So you guys need to know that you're not only being watched by the camera and by other recording devices, but upstairs God is looking out for you. My dream is that if I were able to come back here in about 10 years, you people would be probably in the 11th and 12th grade, and you wouldn't even be listening to me then. You'd be worried about college, university. How do you get into the good schools? Well, let me tell you one of the easy ways to get into good schools is, because whether you want to believe it or not, you cannot live in the 21st century without advanced secondary education and higher education, as it's called. And the beauty of what you have is the fact that you're thinking at least in 2 streams, 2 cultures, all day long. One of the strong points about the Hasten Hebrew Academy, and it's always been the ethos of the school. Ethos. It's a big fancy word. Anybody know how to spell ethos? It's a hard word.
Ella, do you know how to say?
Okay, it has to do with, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a very simple word, ethos. Look it up, Google it, you'll find out what ethos is. It has a lot to even do with the word ethics, because it means to be a person with derech eretz, who has a belief, who has a feeling, and who wants to do something with that feeling. And the school actually teaches you to think in many, many directions, omnidirectional, different levels. And our tradition, our Jewish tradition, is extremely important in terms of getting into the good schools. You realize that if you go to some of the finest schools in North America and you really scratch the surface of who's on the faculty, you'll find people who studied Gemara when they were in the 6th and 7th grade. Could you believe that? And they're now the heads of law schools, such as Harvard and Yale. Who would believe such a thing? Because it teaches you how to think, and that's not the only reason that you have an obligation to keep the faith. Let me tell you about what happened to me after I left Indianapolis. I went to schools in the Midwest to be head of school. I went to Canada twice to go back to the same school in Vancouver. But more importantly, at one point I went down to South America, way down. Anybody have an idea what the lowest level or lowest state, country would be at the tip or around the tip of South America?
Oh, South America.
South America. Don't give me Key West, Florida. I'm talking about South America. Big country. Everybody always thinks of Argentina because of Buenos Aires and Argentina steak, but there's the other side of Argentina, which is
Chile?
Exactly. And I started, just like I came here to start the first Jewish modern Orthodox day school in the city of Indianapolis, I came to Santiago, Chile. And the good news is I had the courage and the confidence and the background to start a school. And that school was English and Hebrew, with a little bit of Spanish tossed in just to make the government happy. That we weren't actually teaching kids not to speak the language of their country. But that was minimal. And the children actually thought in 3 languages. And those students, eventually year after year after year, being tested by the government, just like I just found out yesterday, you students, this school actually produced students with the highest scores in Indiana. And Santiago, Chile, the highest scores in English, math, and believe it or not, Spanish, came from the Jewish Day School of Santiago. So it was called Maimonides College, because college in South America and European countries really means a place where you study. University is where you go after you finish high school. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you that all the information that you have, the curriculum that you have, the fact that you have 2 languages, and possibly even 3, and you ought to really have 4, because I have just come to Eretz Israel to do Aliyah. I've been there only 7 months as a real Israeli citizen. So I'm a dual citizen in the United States and Israel. I came from Hong Kong. Anybody know where that is? Tell me. Yeah, it used to not be considered China. It belonged to England. Very good. And in 1997 it went back to China. Now that's a nice thing that they went back to China, but it's also a little bit scary, because what do we know about China? A couple of facts. Yes?
It's a dictatorship.
Yeah, to say the least. Yes?
We owe them a lot of money.
Oh, do we owe them money? Let me tell you how much money we owe them. If everybody in this class, and your parents, and everybody in this country worked 24 hours a day, every single day of the week. Of course, we only work 6, of course, but it would take us centuries to pay back the amount of money that we owed China. That never should have happened. But China today is the most powerful and the strongest economy in the world. And Hong Kong is a community where it's the gateway to Asia. And I had students from 27 countries in my school, 300 students, in a city. Hong Kong is really a city and a state at the same time, of 3,000. So if you do the mathematics, if we have 300 students for a population of 3,000, what should Indianapolis have with that ratio? 300 to 3,000. That's a ratio in proportion question. Where are the math geniuses in this class? 3 to 3,000. 300 to, yes. Roughly.
To 10 and then to 100.
Okay, so if you multiply that out, how many kids should be in this class, are in this classroom right now?
Well, in this school, there are
In this school.
10,000 Jews in Indianapolis.
10,000.
So if you want to do that same proportion